the costumes department is the hardest working department in my very humble opinion, but they are also one of the most undervalued, undermined, underpaid, disregarded departments. And it's quite unfortunate because the department contributes so much to the film industry as a whole. I call us, because I work in the costumes department right now, I call us the storytellers without saying a word, because you're doing it through the costume. So if a character is sad or a character is happy, then you have to portray that without speaking at all. And there is an army of costume designers, assistant costume designers, costumers, supervisors, cutters and fitters, seamstresses and tailors, costumes PAs, an amalgamation of people who bring that entire department together, but also they make the set run more efficiently. They give to the story in a way that it's just unimaginable. But among wonderful costume designers I've had the honor and privilege of working with, Janty Yates is by far one of the most decorated that I've experienced. There are plenty more out there, but she's the one who is by far the most decorated that I've worked with. I'm excited to get to speak with her today. So you have won one Academy Award. You're nominated for another one for Napoleon. You've been nominated for 2 BAFTA Awards, 2 Critics' Choice Awards, 4 Costume Designers Guild Awards, Satellite Awards, Goya, and a whole bunch more. So what I would like to know is, what did it cost you?
My whole life.
What do you mean your whole life?
I'm so overwhelmed I didn't even know I had that many nominations, to be honest. I'm so overwhelmed. And this last run for Napoleon has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I take no responsibility. It's all down to Dave Crossman, who's a genius. I just did the civilians. He did the military. What did it cost me? Nothing. I love with a passion what I do. I would be working in a supermarket otherwise. I have no other skills at all.
Janty, what do you mean you have no other skills?
I have no other skills. I can pattern cut and I can design, and that's it. I would be working in a supermarket if the film industry didn't employ me.
Okay, so we had dinner one night, and I can't remember specifically what you said, but you said something like when you were growing up, that what you desired to do with your life, I think you called it silly or something. And I asked you, was it because you had never seen anyone else do it? Is that why you had that perspective? Maybe you remember exactly what you said or how you felt about that.
Well, I can just tell you exactly how I felt. Nobody in any walk that I went through in life ever wanted to go to dress design, pattern cutting, and costume making college. My mother wanted me to go to secretarial college, which was the big thing back then, talking hundreds of years ago. And basically, I just started. I started sewing at 11 on the granny's treadle, literally cliche treadle machine, and I drew all the time, and it was just inevitable. I was cutting out hipster bell-bottom trousers, floral trousers, when I was 13 without a pattern, and making them for that Saturday night.
Yeah,
advanced.
Yeah. When I first got into the industry, for one, it was kind of a secret because I didn't tell anyone I was going to quit my day job. I was working at Sunglass Hut, which I learned a lot. And I believe it prepared me a lot for this industry, just working with people and having to work in team settings, because in school, I always opted to work by myself because it was just easier that way.
Yeah.
I had to sort of secretly transition into this industry because I knew it would make no sense to the people around me because no one else was doing it. So where did you find the courage to be able to do that during that time when, like you say, women were secretaries? They weren't really carving their way. At least it wasn't more acceptable then.
Well, do you know, I owe a lot to my mother because I passed what we have over here as the 11 plus. So I had free education for all my secondary years. So from 11 to 17. And basically, she, I think, although she was earning very little, she was on a widow's pension. She put whatever money she'd put aside for my education into this private college. And I was there and I did my studies and I went on to become a wholesale fashion artist in the city, which basically I'm so glad I didn't persevere with. But I was there for a good year or two.
Yeah. When I was in college, I didn't really know the world of costumes, designing or anything like that.
And nothing at all.
Right.
Right. And basically, in actual fact, the wholesale fashion manufacturer who I worked with, they were no good really either because they were wholesale fashion manufacturers. They weren't anything to do with film. It was my ex at the time who was an editor, and he was American. I met him in Mallorca, and he wanted to come back to England. He wanted to arrive in England because he was from DC, and I wanted to travel and see the world and broaden my mind. And I came limping back to England with him. But I thought, I'm loved. I've got to stick with it. And he introduced me to a couple of people who helped me. Really, I was an assistant.
Yeah.
And working for nothing.
Yeah.
That's how I started.
Yeah. How long did it take you to, I guess, become a costumer or ACD or what were the different positions?
I mean, in England, you're a costumer, really. And only when you become very much in the loop of TV series and film would you even consider being an ACD. I actually never was an ACD. I did about 15, 20 years of commercials, which was the most wonderful training in the world. And during that time, I was doing short films, either assisting or in the end, I started to do them, I was asked to do them under my own steam. I then started to do television, and I did a lot of television series, probably 7 or 8 anyway.
Yeah.
Which take a long time because they're always, 150 different episodes.
Yeah. And, at least back then, I feel like now it's not as much though. It doesn't, or the ones the series I've worked on haven't taken as much time, unfortunately.
Well, I'm exaggerating, but it did. I actually said to myself physically that I would give myself 6 months to try and crack TV and a TV series. And actually I didn't have to wait more than a month. And then after about, I don't know how many years, but probably 6 or 7 years, I thought, right, I'm going to try and see if I can open the door of film. And I remember thinking, gosh, this is so ambitious of me. But I thought, well, I'll try it. And each time I was able to land a film or a TV series within a month or two. So I never had to keep myself unemployed for 6 months.
Yeah.
To open the doors.
Do you feel that there were some barriers to entry, like after you got that initial introduction into the film industry?
No, everywhere I went, they were so nice. They were so helpful. They were so pleasant. They asked me back. I made friends with producers, with all the crew, of course, but with directors. And funnily enough, I actually I worked for, it's called the comic strip, for some time, and one of the actors, well, two of them were going to do Waiting for Godot, in London's West End. Mm-hmm. And he didn't like the tramp outfits he was given. So he rang me up and he said, "Oh, Janty, can you help me? Can you, do something?" I said, "Sure." And they were rehearsing in Sadler's Wells, and I turned their rehearsal room into a sort of Ralph Lauren tramp shop. And he found what he wanted, but the director of Waiting for Godot came in and approved everything, and he was the person that offered me my first feature film. So it happened that way, sort of strange, but it was
I believe you were prepared. Have you defined purpose for yourself? Like, was that ever a thing of like, okay, I feel like this is my purpose, or you were in search of it through this?
No, I knew, because I'd dealt with commercials people in life, and I thought they were a bunch of twits. But I actually hadn't realized that the production companies employed crews. They weren't the advertising people. And I made so many friends, and I thought, this is what I love to do. I love to do it. And I was lucky to be employed. We have things over here called first pencil, second pencil, third pencil. And that's your booking agent would take for you. And I was always lucky to have 2 or 3 pencils on each week for years.
Yeah, that's good.
I guess it was just luck, really. And the fact that I didn't make I did have a couple of major F-ups, but, overall.
I'm sure we all do. Well, Janty, I don't call it luck, but I also am a bit of a different belief system. I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. So I know that there's a divine design to all of our lives, and there is purpose. I watched your speech when you won for the first Gladiator, and you were really intentional. Also, I really loved your dress, by the way. But you were really intentional about highlighting all of the people who we can see walking behind you, but who are quite literally the people who kind of bolster you and the position of a costume designer in general. How important has that been to build those relationships with people you can trust? Because I know that you've been working with some of your crew for years now, almost as long as you've been designing. So how important is that?
Well, you never can guarantee your crew. I hope to make friends with my crew on the whole, but basically we're all freelance. So, and you could be out of work for 3 or 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, who knows? And you've got to find who's available. So I'm very lucky that I have made a lot of friends in the business. But the reason I wanted everybody to be responsible for the Oscar was because I didn't feel justified. I thought I employed 180 people. They were costume drivers, articulated lorry drivers, breakdown drivers, everybody. And I thought they all deserve it. But my name happened to be at the top, so I took it. Which only about 10 years ago did I admit to that I thought, well, I've got it, so I've got to own up to it. We're a bit more modern in England than in America.
No, I appreciated that, and I also appreciated I'm sure all of those people, all of the crew appreciated it too. Not because I don't believe that we're looking for validation, because that's why the name of my show is Alesha Behind the Scenes Below the Line. So we all know what we've signed up for. We're behind the scenes, and a lot of people in the regular world, and even some people within the industry, don't actually get to see what we do. Or I'll have maybe PAs who are just not just set PAs, but who are set PAs come up and they want to do something within the costumes department. And I'm like, well, there are hundreds of people on this crew who I have never even met, and I don't even know what their jobs are. So we're a whole little production in itself. So I guess if you had to empower any costumers or aspiring designers, because I am not an aspiring designer whatsoever, but anyone who is in the industry or coming up, or the people who already have a few rungs, who have cleared a few rungs on their ladder, how would you empower them?
Well, I'd basically say you've got to persevere. You know, especially with things like the SAG strike last year, you know, it's so demoralizing, and you have to persevere, and you have to, I mean, I would work for a lower rate. I would work, you know, I would just make myself amenable to whatever they're asking for. Nowadays, it's different because I'm such an old lady. I can say, I can't get there, I need a car, and things like that. I don't know my way, I'm going to get lost, and all of that. So basically, if you're coming up and you've got the experience, I would always meet you. I would always, at least every single person that emails me or gets to me via my agent, I try and write back to. Usually it's for some strange reason, they usually contact me at the end of a project. So I've got nothing to offer them. But I'd say, you know, send me your drawings, send me your concepts, send me your CV. And I gave a talk on Sunday at the Soho Hotel, and I was approached by two students. They're at London College of Fashion, and how do we get into film industry? And I said, well, you've just got to, as I'd said during my chat, you've got to become an assistant, and you've got to work for no or little money, and you've got to never say no, always say yes, and always run everywhere. And those are my words of advice to everybody who wants to join the film industry. Those who've joined the industry, they've really got to persevere and never stop pounding people.
I'm going to push back a little. So right now, the Costume Designers Guild is working for pay equity for the department. Well, for costume designers primarily. But when does one have to stand up for themselves and say no and ask for what they believe they deserve?
Well, I think all the time. I was at the Costume Designers Guild Awards last week, and there were some wonderful costumes. But, you know, it's true, there is a desperate need for equity. Desperate need for equity. I mean, the fact that we should be on a par with DOPs, and we should be on a par with production designers, and we are not. We are not throughout the board. And that is my biggest beef. And I was haranguing my agent about it, along with the president of the Costume Designers Guild, who's kind of a mate. And we were saying, you know, just why does this happen? It's through misogyny, and it's through basically the fact that nearly every producer is male. And end of. And I was asked on Sunday, I was asked, what would I like to change in the business? And I said, I'd like far more female producers, because they understand, you've got shorthand with them, and they just get it. Whereas you have to go around the houses, explain everything to the men, explain it 3 times, and they still won't give you the money, you know, and they still won't pay you overtime. They still won't give you that extra truck. You know, they still, because they're so usually very mean, but not mean because there's no budget, just because they like to get one over you. And I like also the fact that I've just said that we should have parity. We should all be paid roughly the same. Lower the production designers, lower the DOPs, and up the costume designers. And hair and makeup are under the same umbrella.
So you have a really good relationship, it seems, I don't know, but I know you've been working with him a long time, with Ridley Scott, who is someone who has some power within the industry. Have you found that your working relationship with him has brought any sort of relief? No?
No, because basically I feel so honored to be even working for Sir Ridley Scott. I feel so honored that I can't bring things like that up with him. He and I have a completely creative relationship.
Okay.
You know, if I was to say, oh, I haven't got my assistant because she's not going to work here for the money, he'd just move on. You know, you go, oh, well, you know. So it's the producers that I always have this beef with.
Okay.
They just seem to love squashing them down.
Yeah. Well, one thing I am doing, Janty, is my goal has always been to get back to production. I started on the production side, but like you, I thought I wanted to do fashion merchandising. But then when I got into the industry, I saw what the costumes department was doing. And I said, oh, let me go and see what they have over there. And then I got to see some of the disparities just in the industry as a whole, but definitely within the costumes department. It's so unfortunate because you designers, y'all give your entire lives.
You marry a movie. You completely marry a movie. Yeah.
You do. And divorce your life.
Yeah.
And
you don't have a life.
Yeah. And I don't believe it has to be that way, but that's why I'm working my way into producing, because I do know that we have to have some sort of leverage and power in order to make any significant changes, lasting changes, not just to face or race, but like the whole entire culture, the bloodline of the industry. So I appreciate you.
Good for you.
Yeah. And producers should feel privileged to have you on their production.
They are so never feeling privileged. I can assure you of that.
Okay, well, I know you have to get back to sourcing your fabrics for your next
dividing them up. A huge warehouse full of them. It's enormous.
Yeah, so I imagine whatever you're working on now, you're going to be nominated again. And I also expect when you're nominated next year for Gladiator 2 to be invited to the party. Okay. Okay.
One step at a time. Let's get this lot over and done with.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's been delightful to see you and shoot the proverbial.
Yes, exactly. All right. Thank you, Janty.